Have your Bibles this morning. Turn with me, if you would, to Psalms 107. Psalms 107, looking at verse 28. I never thought that I would have to, I think it was last week, I'm using a new camera this week, and I've used it for a couple of devotionals, and the reason I got my phone laying on the pulpit is because that's the remote control to turn the camera on and off. But I never thought that I would have to come to church, and the first 6 or 7 weeks we did it, I was trapped. I was trapped behind the table that I was using, and I couldn't move. And then last week, I think it was, we moved the phone out further away, and I had Jeannie sit out there, and I'd walk over here, and I'd say, am I still in the shot? And then I'd walk over there, and you sort of had invisible lines to where you could go to, and thankfully the camera we got now, it goes all the way from that window all the way over to the other side of the cross. So unless I start running the pews, I think we'll be safe. And you probably wouldn't want that on tape anyways. And I've had to retrain my brain just a little, because not only did I have to think about the folks that were here, because each week we had, except for the first couple of weeks I was here by myself. I didn't turn the heat on or nothing. I just came in. A couple of mornings it was a little chilly, and but I hated to heat the whole church up for one person. But then, I had to think about the folks that were here. Then I had to think about the folks that would be watching it when we posted it. And I still have to do that today, because we have some church members that are not with us today. And as I said when I posted that we would be having church services today, anyone that doesn't feel comfortable, please just continue to watch our services at 5. I will do my diligence to the way we're posting them now. It takes a little bit longer to upload. I worked all morning this morning getting a devotional on Facebook, and I still haven't got it to YouTube yet. But I was like 5 minutes having it done when it was time to come to church. So I had to click the cancel and turn it off. But I think I've solved part of those problems, I think, today, and I'll work on it this afternoon. Pandemics are tiresome. I don't know if you realize this or not. I've said it a couple of times. Before this started, I was preaching one service a week and doing a devotional at night, and most of the devotional was somebody else teaching it. But now I'm doing 8 services a week. It's tiresome. 8 services a week. Last month I rode 1,000 miles on my bicycle. This month I'm behind, and that's plus working 55 hours a week. So it's tiresome. Pandemics are tiresome. I'll be glad when it's over. But we're going to continue to post the devotionals every day. I've had a lot of folks that have enjoyed that. And as I've said, we have folks that's watching it that would never be able to attend our church services. It's just physically impossible for them to attend our church services. And we're thankful that the Lord has allowed us to do that. Home again. That's the thing. Did you like our picture? Those of you that have Facebook. I think I stole that from either Sherry or Renee. I can't remember. But I thought of Sherry when I saw it. We didn't get in trouble. Each week at Renee has sung, YouTube has flagged us for a copyright infringement. They will again today. But we haven't got fined or nothing yet. But we just can't make no money off of it. We can't allow the advertisers to get on, so we can't make no money. But we didn't get flagged for using the Muppets on Facebook, so I like that. That sort of reminded me of our church. It made me think of us and thought about home again. And a time to come home, an exciting time. I don't know about you, but I'm excited. I was excited to come into the Lord's house. I was excited in anticipation to think about folks actually being here and actually coming together. You've heard so much talk, and I know that people have said this, And I know that you can worship anywhere you're at. I've worshiped on a bicycle. The other morning at the Y, I worshiped on the treadmill, and I hope nobody looked over at me. I didn't get too excited, but I was listening to some good music, and the Holy Spirit was in the room, and it was just a blessing, just a time to think about the Lord and to be with the Lord and commune with Him and talk with Him. I understand that you can do that, but I want to tell you, folks, there is nothing like assembling together with God's people. We draw strength from God's people. We draw strength from coming together, and we encourage each other. We lift each other up. If you go and study, a lot of people like to talk about the early church. You go and study the early church, they came together every day of the week. Every day of the week they got together. They'd go to this one's house. They'd go to that one's house. And then on the Lord's Day, it says in the Bible that they went to the temple. That they went to the temple. So yes, we can worship anywhere we want to be. We can worship anywhere, doing anything at any time. But it's important that God's people come to His house. Because we come to give our tithes and offerings. We come to strengthen each other. We come when one is hurting, the other one's to lift them up. And we come so that we know what's going on in each other's lives, so that we can encourage each other. I know that we can do that all through social media today, but there's so much, we just can't have the relationships that we need without coming together. And it's important. It is important. No matter what anybody says. I want to tell you, you put all the initials in front of your name that you want, you're still never going to convince me that this is not the most important thing in your life. Coming together in God's house. It's life. It gives you life. I felt better today. And I'm not a sickly person, and I usually get up every day, and some days I fall back to sleep in a recliner. Some days it's better than others. But you know, I'm pretty much I get up every day about the same time. But I got up this morning with a little bit quicker step in my walk, a little bit more excitement. And Jeannie and I were sitting there, and even Jeannie was a little more excited because about an hour before church she says, "Are you about ready to go?" And she never wanted to be ready to go. And I'm thinking, Jeannie, we don't have to be there at 10:45. Let's wait just a few more minutes, drink a little bit more coffee. But there's excitement in there. Faith over fear. Faith over fear. I'm so glad that we went through the series Daring Faith. I'm so glad that we went through the series 40 Days of Prayer. And we were in the midst of a time to dream. Let me give you a little update on the time to dream. This is the first series that we have done as a church. We get a lot of information. We get a lot of our spiritual growth campaigns through another church. And this is the first one that we did that they were in the process of doing. We were 2 weeks behind Saddleback. They're doing their spiritual growth campaign. We were 2 weeks behind them in lessons. And when the pandemic hit, the lessons stopped. So we had a little bit of buffer there. And I even emailed, cried, and begged for them just to send me the stuff for the kids, but they didn't have it. And so we're not going to immediately go right back into a time to dream. But what we are going to do, and what I plan to do, is to delay that till later on in the summer or even in the fall. And what we will do, we will just start over. We will go back to the beginning and go through it 40 days. Why? Because it's important. Remember why we do 40-day spiritual growth campaigns? Because it takes 40 days of your life to create a habit. And when you go through those spiritual growth campaigns, you go through them in 40 days. We had 40 days of prayer, 40 Daring Faith, which was 40 days, and we stayed in a process. Our devotional is a whole year, so we will still be in the devotional when we do it. So that doesn't matter. But we will go back and we will pick up at the beginning and start over when we do it. And I'm praying and seeing the Lord. Over the next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about faith over fear. And I know I keep repeating that, but it's important. It's important that we put our faith and our trust and our hope and our dependency in God. You know, I have a job. You have a job. Most of you do. Some of you draw them checks. Maybe I'll get to draw on them checks one of these days. But you have a job. I trust that I'm going to have to get a paycheck every week. I hope that I am. I hope that we're going to sell something and I get a paycheck every week. And I thank God for that job. Why? Because it's because of God that I have it. It's because of God that I have a paycheck. Why? Because if I wasn't healthy, if I didn't have the ability to do what I do, if I didn't have the strength, if I was sick, if I was in the hospital, then I couldn't do it. So God is still blessing us in every aspect of our life, and we must walk by faith and trust God to supply the things that we need, to give us the things that we need, to give us our groceries, to give us. Everybody has been in a frenzy of worried about meat supplies and food supplies and all that. I'm not worried, because if we run out of beef, we'll eat beans. If we run out of beans, we'll eat dirt if we have to. But God says in His Word that He will supply all of our needs. He will give us the things that we need. I want to tell you, we as Americans, we have been blessed. We have been given far more than what we could ever need. Jeannie sent me on a little mission a couple of Sundays ago. I went to Food City. I probably won't get to do that very often. But she wanted me to pick up some hamburger meat and stuff over in Athens while I was at Food City. And I pushed a buggy up to the front and had $200 worth of meat. Nothing else. Had a little bit of salad. Had a little bit of rice in there. But so I probably am banned from going to the grocery store for a while. Psalms 107. Verse 20, I'm so excited to see you. I might preach 8 weeks worth of sermons. Verse 28 says, Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and He brings them out of their distresses. He calms the storm so that its waves are still. Then they are glad because they are quiet. So He guides them in their distress. He guides them in their desired haven. Oh, that man would give thanks to the Lord for His goodness and for His wonderful works to the children of men. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and He brings them out of their distress. When we put our faith and our hope and our trust in the Lord, He can supply everything that we need. This last week, as I began to plan this event for today, Home Again, I began to reflect on back on days gone by and the brave men and women who built our country. And I asked myself this question: what would they do? What did they do when the enemy showed up at the door? I've often said this, and I like to look at Revolutionary War. I like to look at the Civil War. I like to look at how they did battle, and I think about those men and women and all the brave people. I think about when we fought for our independence, when brave men and women walked out and put their life on the line. We think about this pandemic, and we think about the things that are going on in our nation today, where people are walking around with masks. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't do the things that they do. I'm not saying that they shouldn't do that. But we do have to have a little faith, and we have to have a little bit of bravery in our lives. And I think about those guys that fought in those armies. And I've said many, many times, I didn't think, they were brave men, but I just want to tell you, I never did think that they was the brightest bulb in the chandelier. They sort of remind me, they go out in a field and they line up. They get in a big long line. That's the way they did war back then. They got in a big long line. Now, as I would walk out there, but then these people at home couldn't see me, so I'm having to refrain myself. They throw that musket up on their shoulder, and they walk out there 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 wide, and they walk out in the middle of a field. Now, I understand they just came out of trees. They could have hid behind the trees. And they walked out in the middle of a field and lined up. Then this guy behind them starts giving these commands. Order arms! They pull their guns up. And then all at once, those 25, 30 years old, 50, fire! They shoot. Here's these other guys standing over here. And you're thinking, we always want to be at the front of the line, don't we? I bet them guys wasn't fighting to get at the front of the line on that day. Because you know what? A bunch of them died. They wasn't good shots though, or their guns wasn't that good, because if they were, they'd just mowed down that whole front line right off the bat. But they stood out there knowing if there was 25 of them, they had a good chance, a high percentage, that they was going to die, be wounded, or make it. They didn't have much of any other option. There's one thing: they was either going to die, get wounded, or they was going to live to round 2 when they reloaded. Then they had to stop and reload while people were still shooting. You either have to think one or two things. Those guys were nuts, or they were brave. They were brave because what felt like what they were fighting for was worth it. Now I beat all around that bush to get to that point. To get to that point. There is things in life that's worth fighting for. There is things in life that is worth taking a chance for. You and I as Christians, we have to defend the faith, defend the gospel of Jesus Christ. We need bravery. We need bravery. We need faith in our Lord. We need faith over the fear of what the world can bring against us. We need to trust God that He is able to supply everything we need. They would face it with faith over fear. They would cry out to God for wisdom. Not the CNBC, not the Fox, and not the CNN. I want to tell you, and you've heard me say this a million times, if we could go back to just 1 hour of news a day, there'd be a whole lot less going on in our world. If we could just go back to watching the news, we'd see what happened in Chattanooga or Knoxville, whichever you had. We'd see what the weather was going to be like. We'd see what happened around our community. Then we'd watch the world news. And they would focus about 2 minutes on this story, 2 minutes on that story, and about 2 minutes on that story. And you'd have 15 commercials, and it'd be over. And we'd go about our day, and we wouldn't know about all the ugly, awful things that's happening everywhere. Now, I believe in being informed. I believe that we need to be informed. But I don't believe that we need to live and just cover ourselves up with all the negativity going on in our world today. We get news on every corner. We get it from Instagram. We get it from Facebook. We get it from Twitter. We get it from every channel on the TV. I'm not saying we don't have to be smart and use some common sense, but when all the so-called experts, and we talked earlier today, all these so-called experts that are on TV that are drawing big paychecks while they're telling everybody else not to go to work, while they're telling everybody else to lose a business that they've worked their whole life for. All these so-called experts, and they have to tell grown men and women to wash their hands. I want to tell you, when we have experts on TV that their cure for this pandemic is for you to wash your hands, it tells me that our society has fallen off a cliff. Because we used to, when we was kids, and all of you remember it, we'd come into the dinner table. That's, around about the same time that news was coming on that we never did watch. And we'd go wash our hands before we eat. People nowadays, they wash their hands. You have to put signs up in bathrooms reminding people, if you're an employee here in this restaurant, wash your hands. It tells you a lot about a society that you have to remind grown men and women to do essential things, to wash their hands. You have to remind people if they're sick to stay at home. You have to remind people to take care of other people and to think about their neighbors. I want to tell you, God forbid, I told a guy early on in this, I said, we would have never called church off. I said, we could have had church and social distance, and most of ours are families are around each other anyways. But I said, the reason why we did is because if one person had gotten sick, the community would have ridiculed you, and you'd have been plagued. And not only that, if one of you got sick, it would kill me. It would hurt me to the core. But I want to tell you, it is time for us to put our trust in the Creator of the world. I've told you over and over that I am a simple man, and I think of simple solutions. Also, I believe the Bible is God's Word, and it's true, and the Bible can direct us in every event in our life. We must trust it. So what does it say about faith over fear? What does the Bible say for you and I? Well, in 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7, it says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidness, but of power, love, and self-discipline." God has not given us a spirit of fear. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 through 9, it says, "Do not worry about anything." Listen to this. "Instead, pray about everything." Don't worry about anything, but pray about everything. Look what it says next. Paul says this. Paul says, tell God what you need. Tell Him what you need. And thank Him for all He has done. Does this take you back? Does it remind you, and I say this over and over and over again, does it remind you of 40 days of prayer? How that we walked through and how we looked at the Lord's Prayer? It says after that, it says, then you will experience God's peace. You will experience God's peace. And it will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. And now, dear brother and sister, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all you learned and received from me. Everything you heard from me and saw me doing, then the God of peace will be with you. Psalms 56:3 says, but when I am afraid, I put my trust in you. When I am afraid, I put my trust in God. When I am nervous, I put my trust in God. When I'm scared in my life, I put my trust in God. And I trust Him that He is able to sustain me and able to take care of me, able to provide for me. And in Psalm 34:4 it says, I prayed to the Lord, and He answered me. And listen to this. And He freed me from my fears. He freed me from my fears. Nowhere in the Bible does it tell us to be stupid. Nowhere in the Bible does it tell us to be radical. Nowhere in the Bible does it tell us to do anything to hurt anyone. But the Bible tells us that we cannot live in fear. We cannot be afraid. We have to trust that the God that created the universe is able to do it. I said something to this effect in our devotional this morning. I said, God is wanting to take the results of this pandemic and move throughout our communities in a mighty way. God is wanting to bring a revival to us. He is wanting to bring the communities back into the church. God is wanting to do a miracle. And He says in Psalm 34:4, I prayed to the Lord, and He answered me. He freed me from all my fears. And last but certainly not least, the words He spoke to Joshua as he was leading God's people. He said, this is my command. He says, be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Can you see it? Can you see it? We got 1 million people here. Joshua's having a conversation with God. God says, Joshua, don't be afraid. Don't be timid. Don't be afraid of what's across over there. He said, I'm going to tell you how to cross the Jordan. He said, have them priests just walk off into the Jordan. He said, it's going to part. And you're going to walk across. All the people's going to walk across on dry ground. And said, then every army, he says not only that, but says, everywhere you put your foot, I'm going to give it to you. And in their first battle, when they crossed over in Jericho, how much did they have to fight? They didn't. All they did was march around, march around, march around. Those people in the city of Jericho was looking down and said, these people right here, they're nuts. They're just out there walking around. They're not saying nothing. They're talking to one another. They're just marching around. And then suddenly they let out a shout. Did they do it? Did the shout tear the walls down? No, them following God's instructions toward the walls now. He says, this is my command, be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid of the unknown. Don't be discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. I want to tell you, God is with us today. God is with you today. God is with you whether you are walking and healthy and strong. God is with you if you're sick. I want to tell you, church, I got to get this off my chest. I have never met so many Christians in my life that are afraid of dying. I have never. And since all this started, and I want to tell you, I've never met so many Christians that are afraid of death. I want to tell you, I'm not going to blow my brains out today, but I want to tell you this, I look forward to it. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Hey, I want to tell you, I'm living on this earth making preparations to spend eternity in heaven. Eternity in heaven. So why am I afraid? What little suffering that I might have here I'm going to spend eternity in heaven, and there'll be no suffering. There'll be no pain. God has promised us this. This is just a preparation point. This is just a place to get ready for the life that God has in store for us. Don't be afraid. We can't be afraid. I want to read you a quote from a great American. This is a quote from Franklin Delano Roosevelt on his inaugural address in 1933 in the midst of the Great Depression. And I'm going to read you portions of it. It says, I am certain that my fellow Americans expect that on my introduction into the presidency, I will address them with candor and a decision which the present situation of our people entail. This is preeminently the time to speak the truth, the whole truth, frankly and boldly. Nor need we shrink from honest-facing conditions in our country today. This great nation will endure as it has endured. It will revive and will prosper. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Yet our distress, and I skipped down, I didn't read the whole speech, but this is portions of it. It says, yet our distress comes from no failure of substance. We are stricken by no plague of locusts compared with the pearls which our forefathers conquered because they believed and were not afraid. We have still much to be thankful for. Nature still offers her bounty, and human efforts have multiplied it. And at the end of the speech, he says this, in this dedication of our nation, we humbly ask the blessings of God. May He protect each and every one of us. May He guide me in the days to come. I pray each day, may my God in heaven protect each and every one of us. And may God guide me in my steps. May God guide me in my life. Church, it's time that we as Christians stop living in fear and start living in faith. It's time that we lose our sense of we're afraid to fail, and we quit depending and trusting on God. God is wanting to wake us up. God is wanting us to depend on Him. He wants us to get up each day and say, God, today is your day. Today is your day. How can I live for you today? How can I live for you? Are you living in faith or are you living in fear? Renee, come and get us a song of invitation. I feel like a TV evangelist because I have to talk to people at home too that's going to be watching this later. I worked all last week. Technology is driving me nuts. I never thought that I'd have to learn technology at 58 years old. I finally figured out how to get it taken off my YouTube channel where people can leave comments. A friend of ours that lives in San Francisco, California, she watches our video each week, and hello, Miss Cookie, you'll see us tonight. She wasn't able to leave a comment on YouTube, and she sent me a video. I had to watch a YouTube video to learn how to fix my YouTube channel. I think I got all that fixed, but touching so many lives, so many people. I want to tell you one thing. This has made us push the gospel out. It's pushed us out of our comfort zone. Because I've had this conversation with God and with myself. I never wanted to be on TV. I never wanted to be on Facebook Live. I don't mind doing stupid stuff, but serious stuff, I didn't want to do it, because you open yourself up to all the crazy stuff of the world. But I'm going to tell you, this has forced us outside our comfort zone. We have to have faith that God is going to do amazing things through it. If you're here this morning and you're living in fear and you need to pray, we can pray social distance. I won't come up and put my arm around you. If you ask